Alright everyone, now it's time to talk about the potential political fallout from these far-left riots that we're seeing, and that's really what they are. They're being egged on by fascists, which is to say communists, by far-left political elements, by the sort of people that have like Bernie Sanders tattooed on their scrotum. That's the sort of people that are sort of handing out the Molotovs, and then they, of course, they back off. They run away as soon as the fighting starts, but they're just, they're there to start violence for either political reasons or because they want to do a smash and grab. Like they decided, shit, I want a new iPhone, I can't afford it because, you know, the lockdowns or something, I'm just going to go grab one. So they throw a couple bricks, and then when other people start to join in, they quickly grab their iPhone and leave it. Apparently a lot of these places have trackers in some of the electronics that these looters are stealing, so they know who's taking them. They'll be able to recover the property by and large, and the people responsible. And most of them are probably too dumb to dump it, like in some place, or to open it up certainly and remove the tracker, so most of them are fucked. Good riddance, get them off the street. Anyway, I think it'll be weeks before we know the actual fall. And keep this in mind, there's always a lag in polling because polling periods are not instantaneous. So you get polls on an aggregate that are several days old and that began maybe even a week before. So it'll be at least a week until we get the first few data points. Keep in mind that what you see now as far as his average, which is around 44, it's roughly stable. His disapproval spiked, but it's still lower than it had been before October. It's middling. It's around where Obama was in this point in his first term. I think it's slightly lower at this point. It's been riding up and down. On any given day, it's like half a point higher or lower than what Obama was at. It's statistical noise. There is a lag in polling, though, and you remember, a single poll doesn't mean anything. Like, you get these snap polls, oh, who do you trust more to deal with racial animus, Trump or Biden? One poll, and it'll be a sample like 200 people or something. I keep seeing this from that new survey site and others, and people keep spamming me with it, and they keep asking me, well, what's going to happen with Trump's approval? The short answer is I don't know. The long answer is I can take a really good, educated guess and say his approval probably takes a temporary dip and then rises back up, but you're not even going to see that for a while in the polling aggregate because, again, one data point is meaningless. Could be an outlier. It could falsely show that his approval rose and it actually fell, or vice versa. You need at least 3 or 4 reliable polling firms, aka not CNN and ABC and other cherry-picking firms. Something good like YouGov, Rasmussen, depending on the subject, Quinnipiac, some of these others are more reliable. You got to look at sample size. You got to look at, is it among likely or registered voters and so forth. You got to look at the composition of the sample. If you do all of that, then you can get a reasonably accurate number of basically anything. You can poll people's opinions on virtually any subject. Chocolate versus vanilla versus strawberry. Which is your favorite shake flavor or something? There's an other category for people who don't want to get diabetes, I suppose. That's the way it works. I think that he'll have a temporary and small dip. Basically reaction to the initial riots, because of course, even if he's not responsible, the legacy media harps on it as though he is, number one, because of racism, and number two, when there is unrest, the chief executive disproportionately gets blamed, regardless of what the chief executive is doing. This happened with Obama. There were things that happened during his presidency that were feasibly out of his control. He potentially either got credit or took a hit from it, though. Like with fracking, all he did was stand out of the way, but it started helping the economy. He started building approval thereupon. Now, after a few weeks post that, I think that when it becomes clear the extent of damage, the political composition of the provocateurs causing the riots, number 2, since some of them have already been caught, we're going to find out more about their particular motives. Antifa, goes nuts and still probably continues attempting in vain to stir up more trouble. It's going to become, I think, increasingly obvious to people that the Democrats really jumped the gun in supporting the protests, because initially, when the initial response was supporting the protests, the first night was more peaceful. The only real rioting you had was Minneapolis. You have vigils and shit like that elsewhere. So most people in the country, although they were seeing the riots on TV, locally they're seeing a love fest, and they're like, well, those people are angry at their police force. People continued to riot for multiple nights, even after charges of third-degree murder and lesser-included charges were levied against the cop involved in the case. Of course, there may unfortunately be a second wave of riots at some point in the future, and I'll explain why. Judging from the fentanyl, the cocaine, and other things that we now know about this particular killing of George Floyd, at the very least, the other cops charged as accomplices in this third-degree murder, I don't think are going to end up getting sentenced. I don't even think that they'll be able feasibly to bring them to trial unless it's a show trial. They'll probably be found not guilty, put before a jury. Now, the main cop involved, I think the manslaughter charge will definitely stick, but even third degree in that case, if you've got a person, again, on drugs actively at the time, definitely acting in a disorderly manner, apparently, or allegedly, it's going to be hard to make that charge stick. Now, of course, if I were on the jury, I'd want first-degree murder, because I think any time that you're kneeling on someone's neck for an excessive period, yeah, if the person has any health problems, they could die. At any point, you could have realized he was in distress medically and alleviated that pressure. He chose not to do that. At some point, I think that at the very least, that becomes second-degree murder. Definitely a negligent manslaughter I think he'll be charged with that. The problem is that unless they absolutely throw the book at this dude sentencing-wise, and at that point they really can't, people are going to riot again, at least in Minneapolis. They'll probably try to drag the trial out long enough for the public to lose interest, just in the public's interest of having less rioting down the road. They'll probably seek to do that. It's going to be a sore day when that happens. As far as the riots themselves, though, Trump's effort appears to have worked. You know, people are more likely to, believe it or not, hooligan thugs are more likely to act like thugs and throw rocks and bottles of piss and burn tires and roll them into buildings and smash and grab at Target. They're more likely to do that if the National Guard's not there with machine guns. Who would have thought? And of course, it's funny to watch these people think that it's a police state and stuff. Again, where was your anger in Ferguson? At some point, the rioters are taking human lives. They are certainly depriving people of their property. They're victimizing people who have nothing to do with George Floyd and aren't police. You can't possibly make the argument to me that those people should continue to be aggrieved unless you want to sign an order saying, okay, you can shoot the rioters if they come on your property. If they attack you, go ahead and shoot and kill them. Okay, that's fine. Then you don't need the National Guard. All the suburban Karens with their Saturday night specials, they'll take care of it. That'd be really funny to see Karen out on the lawn with a .38. Wouldn't that be funny? No, I think that's the idea that this sinks Trump's presidency. The U.S. has fallen. The Republic is no more. Oh, come on. We've had far worse race riots than this in history. We have. Look at what destroyed Detroit. This might fuck Minneapolis, by the way, long term, but the idea that it's going to cause a massive paradigm shift. Look, the only paradigm shift you could have had was police reform, which I, by the way, support. I don't like authoritarian because one of the biggest problems I have right now is actually the fact that Trump is attempting to militarize the police again. This was a Bush program that was ended by Obama. I supported Obama on that. Yes, I found something I oppose in Trump's plan. Because if things get bad enough, the police, it doesn't matter if they have military equipment, they're still not capable of handling it if the mayor tells them to stand down. No, that material should be in civilian hands. I want to buy the tank. Fuck it, the police shouldn't have the armored Humvee. I want one. I should have the machine gun and the high-grade body armor and stacks of MREs liquidated by Uncle Sam. Yes, of course I want these things. Yes, those toys are fun. Why should the police have all the fun? Again, it's clear. Sometimes you, especially in metro forces, you get negligence. Some of these police forces declined the military hardware Bush offered them, didn't even want them. No, we don't need a Bearcat up here in our town of 13 people. I don't think we're going to need the Humvee either. You can give us the high-powered rifles, though. Those are fun. It's basically what they did in some cities in Vermont. I think Burlington, they accepted the rifles that were offered, but they didn't accept anything else. Like, they're like, well, you know, we don't want to pay the money, number one, and number two, what the fuck's going to happen here? You get a horde of hippies every year, like before weed was legal, it was sort of a tradition for thousands of people to go and smoke reefer on the fucking beach, and the cops would just stand around. What are they going to do? It's too many people. It's civil disobedience, actually. This, though, isn't civil disobedience. This is just rioting. It's not nonviolent protesting, it's rioting. The protesters aren't being abused. If you got people standing around waving signs and no one's throwing rocks and stuff, yeah, unless they're past curfew, which only had to be imposed because there were riots in the first place, by the fucking way, talk about cutting off your own nose to spite your fucking face. Other than that, nobody has a problem with them. The other night when smoke grenades were deployed, it was because they were being antagonized after curfew. Of course, initially the main media said, oh, these peaceful protesters did nothing wrong and the police tear gassed them. It turns out that was all fucking bullshit. It's funny. Yeah, I don't see cars burning around the White House now. I wonder why. That's about all. Peace out.